probably agree on.
Yeah, the playoff team for sure.
So do you.
I mean, I tell you what, I don't think there was a more accurate state. And
if they struggle again, I mean, I don't think there's any way you can keep Alex Critch, but.
What's going on, y'all? Bud Elliott here, back again with another episode of Summer School on the Cover 3 podcast. That's our college ball preview series today. I'm talking Virginia. I head to Wahoo's 247. I'm bringing on Jacquie Franciuilli. Jacquie, what's going on?
Everything's going well. Just ready for football season. It seems like it's getting closer and closer.
Absolutely. So, summer recruiting is going on, and UVA kind of had like a, I don't know if we call it a bounce back, but they showed like actual signs of life last year after a really, really difficult situation for Tony Elliott to be thrust into with the, with the tragic shooting there in his first season. How do you expect this team to look different than it did last year?
Well, one thing you have to say for this staff is last year, my goodness, they had so many first-year freshman players having to step up because of injuries. I mean, when I talked to you during our last year's summer school series, we talked how good their veteran defensive line was going to be. And then Cam Butler was hurt in their first ACC game. You had Chico Bennett hurt in that Tennessee game. You had so many of the defensive linemen. So you had freshman guys, Jason Hammond, Mekhi Buchanan had to step in. So you had guys, freshmen in the secondary had to step in. So the bad news last year was you had to play a lot of first-year players you thought you were going to have time to develop. The good news this year is not only do you have those veterans back on the D-line, like Camp Butler was able to get an NCAA waiver. You have Chico Bennett deciding to come back. Jameer Carter decided to come back. But all those freshman guys now have game experience playing in big venues, in big ACC games. And those reps are going to be really good for Virginia because they wanted playable depth. What better way to build playable depth and experience playable depth than having them thrust in the fire last year? So that is the difference in Virginia this year. You have guys who have experience at playing with each other in the systems with that the staff implies. So that's a good step forward for UVA.
Now, on the Cover 3 podcast, we are a big fan of Anthony Calandria. Not that Tony Muskett's terrible, but I like watching Calandria because he's kind of a combination of like Rex Grossman and Johnny Manziel, just out there, just the screw it, I'm going deep type mentality and his scrambling ability. Is there a clear-cut starter for this team at quarterback?
There isn't. Tony Elliott, Coach Kitchings, Taylor Lamb, you ask each and every one of them, and they all say there's going to be a position battle. I would say that heading into the spring, it seemed like it was Calandria's team just because of the off-season workouts and how things were going on. If you talk to the transfer guys, they were all saying that AC, Anthony Calandria, was the player recruiting them really hard. And these were like Chris Tyree, the Notre Dame wide receiver transfer, Trail Harris, the wide receiver transfer. Those guys were saying that Anthony Calandria was recruiting him. So mentally you're thinking, okay, this sets up to AC being the starting quarterback. But that's a time where Tony Muskett was also having shoulder surgery. He came back a lot quicker than anyone expected. I mean, he was full go in the spring. He was not meant to be full go in the spring, but his rehab went way ahead of schedule. And he did really good during the spring. So now we have an actual battle between Tony Muskett and Anthony Calandria as we head towards fall camp. And it depends on who you talk to around the program. Some people say that Tony Muskett is most likely the one who's leading the quarterback battle, and other guys are saying Anthony Calandria. Now, I know Virginia would like to plan ahead for the future and maybe redshirt Anthony Calandria, which was their plan last year, and maybe get him more time in a UVA uniform. But, I mean, there's going to be a battle at fall camp.
Where is this team considerably better than it was last year?
I think it's something like I touched on earlier, is that playable depth. They have guys at several of these positions that have played actual college football games now, coming in as only a second-year player. I think the defensive line is obviously where you look at and seeing like this is the strength of this team if everyone stays healthy because you have Jameer Carter back. He's a veteran. Cam Butler, who I still joke with him, he had 1 year of eligibility left when I interviewed him. Now he's in his year 3 at Virginia. So he's back. You have Chico Bennett, who decided to stay 1 more year. You have Mekhi Buchanan, Jason Hammond, both got great reps last year. Both of them, their bodies look stronger in their offseason workout. They had that first winter workout session with the strength program at UVA because they were summer enrollees last year. So those guys are now bigger and stronger. So you have good depth there. The O-line is stronger than last year because they actually know, 5 guys that have played against each other and played with each other. Unfortunately, they were hurt in the spring, but when you have Brian Stevens now as your guy at center, who has been named in a lot of lists as one of the best centers returning in the ACC, you have him there. He's played with Ty Furnish at right guard. You have Ugana Nana, who's now moved to guard at his position that he's more comfortable with instead of trying to play tackle like he did early on last year. So you have that. Yes, you have some depth concerns at O-line, but you still have your core 5 back from last year. So much better scenario for Virginia. You also were able to get guys from the portal at wide receiver. You got Terrell Harris, Chris Tyree. Those guys are added in there. You also have, 2 quarterbacks we just talked about that you can say a position battle that you would feel confident with either one under center. So Virginia has a lot of pieces here that you can say, like, I like this depth at these positions. Then you add like Cam Robinson back, All-American freshman on 24/7 Sports at linebacker. So they have a lot of good talent. And now you see the number 2 and number 3 guy equally talented in several positions.
It certainly seems like you'll have to go out and earn the victory against Virginia this year, more so than last year, where they were just at times, as you mentioned, due to injury, certain guys just probably weren't, Virginia quality players that are having to play, several hundred snaps on the year, either by talent or just by, age and maturity deficit. Let's talk sleepers here. Who is a player at ACC Media Day who probably won't get first or second team preseason recognition, who could have a pretty good shot to make it come the postseason team?
Sleepers. So for Virginia, it kind of depends on how Virginia, because I think special teams in the area of Virginia needs to vastly improve a lot. I think they lost a lot of games last year. If you look about it, it just turns the momentum of the game. So Cameron Courtney is a true freshman who came in early enrolled. I think he could be someone that could help on the special team side. I think he's, someone that I would say he's somewhat of a sleeper just because he is a true freshman coming in. He could make an early impact if they use him on special teams. I think Sadarian Harrison is another one that they could use on special teams as well. He's kind of a guy who learned under Malik Washington last year in a slot role. But then obviously Chris Tyree came in, so they can kind of use him as well. But he's also a threat on special teams. So those are 2 young guys that I think Virginia can utilize and also have like kind of that sleeper kind of mode there. On the defensive side, I think Mekhi Buchanan is probably the defensive end that I think could really make an impact. Chico Bennett obviously is that starter on that side, but Mekhi Buchanan has flashed a ton during his freshman campaign. And in the spring, he was undoubtedly the player that if you look, you say, wow, he has improved a lot since last year already. So Mekhi Buchanan is definitely a guy to watch when coming into the fall.
This schedule is interesting. So no Florida State, no Miami, no NC State, which is a nice. Those are probably 3 of the 5 best teams in the league by most estimations. But the non-conference is challenging. Notre Dame, Maryland, Coastal. Do you think this team has bowl capability?
I know that at Coastal is something that it kind of drives you when you're looking at this.
Oh, it's at Coastal?
At Coastal. So
okay.
It's very challenging for them, and especially when you consider it's going to be a reunion for Tony Elliott and Clemson too during this next season. So it's a lot of tough games for them. I think it really is. Can this team stay healthy? That is the big question mark for Virginia, because although there's some depth, you still have some question marks. Like I said, the O-line. I mean, when you look at the O-line, Brian Stevens is your center. The next guy that they've run in the 2 deep is Noah Hartzell. Noah Hartzell has done a great job learning from the staff, but he came in as a preferred walk-on. So when you look at that depth there, because Drake Metcalf hurt his Achilles, you're worried that who's next after that starting 5. I mean, last year in the Virginia Tech game, Mikhail Boley and Noah Josie were playing, I believe, having like 100-degree fever. They were both hurt. They both had postseason surgeries and were out during spring because of these surgeries. I mean, that O-line was beat up by the end of the year because they didn't have that playable depth. So that is my concern still, is who's next in that O-line group? Who's healthy to play in that O-line group? So that is the question there is, and then also in the secondary, how's that depth look? Who's going to line up there? Because I think, I should have actually named Corey Thomas as my sleeper, because he's the versatile guy that can play linebacker, or in the secondary, he's a transfer that came in. So are they going to maneuver him in there? That's who they're going to try to get some more depth in the secondary. So For me, it's still depth is a concern for Virginia in the long term in the season. I think they're going to play close games again. I mean, last year were in several close games. That's how they beat North Carolina, but they almost beat Louisville and then they lost at Louisville. So they were always right there. But again, it's always that issue with experience depth. So that's going to be my question is, do they have enough to go past the hurdle? Will they have enough on special teams because they're playing guys on a first team offense on special teams because of all those injuries? Will they have enough mental capabilities, like not have those mental lapses that they did on special teams? That will cost them. I mean, that was what cost them in the JMU. I mean, if you go look back, they had that one special teams play that at the end of the day cost them the game. So again, those are the little question marks I still have with Virginia.
Which are the fall position battles that you think will most impact this team?
I think it's the secondary. I think that's the position battle that I'm looking at. You know, you can look at Jonas Sanker, Antonio Clary. Those are your two starters at safety. And then, like I mentioned, Corey Thomas most likely will be one of the guys at safety, but he's kind of that versatile rover. He's a Coach Rudd type of hybrid linebacker. He can play at safety, he can play at linebacker. So I'm curious to see how he plays. He's going to be a great athlete for them. But I'm curious at that corner battle because you have Keandre Walker, who played for Virginia last year as a true freshman, then got hurt after his first career pick at Boston College, and then missed a few games, and then he missed spring because of an injury as well. Will he be the guy that they lean on at corner? Will Malcolm Green stay at corner, or would he kind of go into safety like where we saw him practice at the spring, or more like in some nickel packages with him? So I think what goes on in the secondary will determine how this season goes for Virginia, because there was a lot of big plays were allowed by Virginia last year's defensively. And a lot of it was some miscommunications in that secondary. And they were also hurt a lot in that secondary, and they didn't have enough depth. So that is my question, is I think how that secondary plays will determine a lot defensively. Now, O-line is another question on offense, because again, the O-line, you can have the best quarterback in the round, but he's not protected. You're going to have some issues. But so the secondary will determine how the defense does, and then the O-line will be how successful the offense does.
Jacquie, really enjoyed this. I know we're going to be following all your coverage there on Wahoo's 247. You can click the QR code, which is like right kind of over your shoulder there. And I mean, you do great work. We're really excited to follow what this Virginia team can do. Maybe it'll make a leap this year. I'm excited to see.
Yeah, that's the dream.
Thanks again.